galaxy trembled in sheer paralytic terror. Entire civilizations brought to their knees, but not the humans. In the Grand Galactic Assembly Hall, alien leaders cowered and whimpered, proposing surrender and sacrifice as the ancient Z'Koth scourge ravaged worlds unopposed. 10,000 races had gathered to beg and plead for salvation, their once proud empires reduced to mewling slaves desperate to appease the destroyers. Trillion-year-old dynasties proposed horrific schemes: evacuate to lightless voids between the stars, grovel before the Z'Koth as vassals, or throw lesser species to the wolves. Entire worlds of sentience hurled into an apocalyptic maw. They would carve the galaxy apart in their spineless frenzy to survive. Then a lone human stood, rising amidst the alien horde. Will Russell, scarred veteran reborn as defiant diplomat, strode to the speaking platform, hard eyes sweeping the assembly. His people had not come to this conclave to kneel, but to forge a sword aimed at the Z'Koth's throat. "Hear me!" Will bellowed, voice booming through the chamber. "This craven display sickens me. Where is your dignity, your fighting spirit? The Z'Koth are not invincible. I propose an alliance, one that wields our diversity as strength, that rallies all the free peoples to battle. Every race has gifts to bring: ancient lore, arcane sciences, esoteric powers. Apart we die, but together our might can break the Z'Koth. Humanity will lead the charge and show you the meaning of courage. We must take this war to the enemy." Audible gasps and mutters of outrage rippled through the assembly as Will revealed his most daring gambit: sacrificing human colonies as bait, luring the Z'Koth into overextending, then encircling and crushing them. Many decried it as a monstrous risk, but Will cut them off with a chopping gesture. Those worlds are doomed regardless. At least this way, their loss has purpose. It buys us the only true chance of victory against a seemingly invincible foe. Or would you rather we all line up for the chopping block one by one? The assembly froze, 1,000 races digesting this radical proposal. Dare they let a young, unproven species dictate strategy on this cosmic scale? But one by one, the logic of the human's argument won them over, his passion and vision undeniable. The assembly erupted into a cacophony of opposing voices as Will stepped down from the platform. Shouts of disbelief and outrage clashed against murmurs of grudging admiration. The human delegation closed ranks around their leader, escorting him into a private antechamber as the debate raged on. Inside, Will met with a cadre of advisors and allies, beings from a dozen worlds who shared humanity's defiant grit. They pored over star charts and tactical displays, urgency etched on every face. "The Valaxians have agreed to aid us," Zorax, the insectoid spy master, clicked. "Their best minds are already working to reverse engineer Z'Koth technology." "And the Krellians pledge 50 legions of their warrior drones," rumbled Titan, Will's hulking bodyguard. "Tough bastards, everyone." Will nodded grimly. "We'll need them. The Orion Merchant Guild is on board too. They'll keep us supplied and pass on any intel they gather." He turned to the flickering hologram of an ethereal being, shimmering with celestial light. "What news from the front, Lyriel?" The angelical creature bowed her head. "Grim tidings, Commander Russell. The Z'Koth advance is relentless. Caraxes Prime has fallen, and with it, control of the Nexus hyperlane. Our time grows short." Will slammed a fist on the display table, eyebrows furrowed. "Then we take it back. Caraxes is the key. If we can break the Z'Koth hold there, we buy ourselves a fighting chance." He met the eyes of each ally in turn, voice hardening with persistence. "I'll lead a strike team. We cut the head off the snake, sabotage their command center. The Valaxians can infiltrate and disable the energy dome. We create an opening, then the Krellians drop in and engage their ground forces." "A dangerous gambit," Zorax chittered. "The casualties will be high." "What choice do we have?" Will growled. "We start bleeding them now, or we'll be bled dry later. This is the only way." As one, the assembled leaders nodded solemnly. The die was cast. Humanity would strike the first blow against the Z'Koth, and the galaxy would tremble at their audacity. The infiltration of Caraxes Prime was a blur of desperate violence. Will's strike team cutting through the Z'Koth defenders like a scythe. Valaxian techno-commandos flitted through the labyrinthine tunnels of the hive node, evading gene-forged horrors to plant their sabotage charges. Krellian legions clashed with the Zkoth slave armies on the blasted plains, a storm of carapace and blades. At the center of the chaos strode Will Russell, armor scorched and splattered with ichor, eyes alight with battle fury. His plasma rifle barked and bucked as he laid waste to wave after wave of foes, rallying his troops for one final charge. Forward, for Terra and the Alliance, we end this now. With a titanic blast, the hive node erupted into flames, the impenetrable energy dome flickering and collapsing. The Zkoth forces reeled in sudden disarray, cut off from the Overseer's psychic command. Howls of triumph from human and Krellian throats shook the blood-soaked ground. But the victory was hard-won. Half of Will's commandos lay unmoving, rent by savage claws and impaled on spear-like teeth. As the ragged survivors stumbled back to their insertion craft, a hush fell over them. So much sacrificed, so many lives snuffed out. And this was only the beginning. Aboard the medical frigate, Will's adrenaline ebbed, exhaustion and pain crashing over him like a titan's fist. The lights above swam and blurred, medics shouting distantly as they cut away his mangled armor. Just before blackness took him, the commander's lips moved in a silent whisper. The Alliance was born. The news spread like wildfire. Against adversity, the Zkoth had been dealt a heavy blow. Caraxus was free, the invaders routed from the Nexus hyperlane. Stunned eyes turned towards this upstart race of defiant primates, hardly daring to believe. In the Zkoth Overseer's throne room, a psionic scream of rage shook the foundations of space and time. Never before had the destroyers been thwarted so decisively. Never had they encountered such brazen resistance. Tremors of dread wormed through the galactic hive mind. Could these humans be the ancient prophecy made manifest? Heralds of the Zkoth's downfall? Far and wide, the embers of hope stirred to life. A breath of chance daring to ease the pall of despair that gripped the galaxy. As all eyes turned to the battles to come, a single whispered question echoed through a billion souls. Who were these humans, and how far would their courage take them? The Alliance's victory at Caraxus Prime ignited a spark of hope across the galaxy. As Will Russell regained consciousness in the medical bay, his mind raced with plans to exploit this hard-won advantage. "Status report," he croaked, struggling to sit up despite the protests of his battered body. Zorax materialized by his bedside, compound eyes gleaming. "The Zkoth are reeling, Commander. We've identified multiple vulnerable targets across their occupied systems." Will nodded, wincing at the movement. "Then we strike now, before they can regroup." In the days that followed, the Alliance launched a dizzying series of coordinated attacks. Valaxian infiltrators disabled planetary defense grids on Nix-3, allowing Krellian shock troops to reclaim the mining world. Human stealth cruisers ambushed Zkoth supply convoys in the Rigel sector, cutting off reinforcements to a dozen frontline systems. Each operation followed a carefully crafted playbook: swift insertion, precise strikes against command and control nodes, then a rapid withdrawal before the enemy could mount an effective response. The galaxy watched in awe as the seemingly invincible Zkoth were repeatedly bloodied and driven back. But even as the Alliance celebrated these victories, a grim race was unfolding behind the scenes. In hidden laboratories scattered across Allied space, the brightest minds of a dozen species toiled ceaselessly to unlock the secrets of captured Zkoth technology. Dr. Ilara Voss, humanity's foremost xenobiologist, peered into an electron microscope, her brow furrowed in concentration. The cellular structure of the Zkoth bioweapon sample defied conventional understanding, its molecules shifting and realigning in impossible patterns. "It's like nothing we've ever seen," she muttered, speaking into a recording device. "The genetic code is mutable, adaptive on a fundamental level. If we could crack this, the applications would be—" A deafening alarm cut her off mid-sentence. Red emergency lights bathed the lab in an eerie glow as panicked shouts echoed from the corridor outside. "They're here! Evacuation Protocol Omega!" Ilara's blood ran cold. She scrambled to secure her samples and data. knowing that if the Zgoth got their hands on this research, all hope would be lost. The counterattack had begun. Across the galaxy, nightmare armies surged forth from the depths of Zgoth-controlled space. World after world fell silent as eldritch energies scoured them of all life. The comm channels were filled with desperate pleas for aid, cut brutally short. Aboard the Alliance flagship, Defiant, Will Russell stood before a rapidly changing holographic map, his face a mask of relentless drive. Entire sectors were going dark, Alliance fleets winking out of existence in the blink of an eye. "We can't hold them," Admiral Thax rumbled, his craggy saurian features twisted in frustration. "Not like this. We need a new strategy, and fast." Will's eyes narrowed, focusing on a pulsing red icon deep in enemy territory. "Then we cut the head off the snake, a direct assault on their high command." A hush fell over the war room. It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. But in the face of total annihilation, what choice did they have? Will turned to a scarred, battle-hardened figure standing silently in the corner. "Gunny Harlock, I need your best. We're going straight into the belly of the beast." Gunnery Sergeant Harlock, a man of legendary exploits and few words, simply nodded. His determined eyes spoke volumes. He understood the stakes and was ready to pay whatever price victory demanded. As the assault force prepared for their high-stakes endeavor, Will and Harlock found a moment of quiet amid the chaos. No flowery speeches or dramatic declarations passed between them. Just a shared look of understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged in the crucible of war. Harlock's team was a motley assortment of elite warriors from across the Alliance. An Arachne saboteur, her multiple limbs filled with cutting-edge tech. A Parian berserker, skin glowing with nearly unleashed plasma energy. Each had been handpicked for their unique skills and unwavering courage. The mission unfolded like a fever dream, a relentless assault against impossible odds. Harlock led his team through the labyrinthine corridors of the Zgoth Citadel, every step bought with blood and sacrifice. They fought with a fury born of desperation, knowing that failure meant the end of everything. In the heart of the enemy stronghold, surrounded by the broken bodies of his comrades, Harlock faced down the Zgoth Overmind. The alien entity was a writhing mass of tentacles and baleful eyes, radiating malevolence beyond human comprehension. Harlock's armor was in tatters, his weapons spent, but as he stared into the abyss of the Overmind's gaze, he felt no fear. With his last ounce of strength, he triggered the antimatter charge strapped to his chest. The Zgoth Citadel erupted in a blinding flash, visible from light years away. For a moment, it seemed as if a new star had been born in the void of space. As the surviving Alliance ships limped home, carrying news of their Pyrrhic victory, a pall of grief settled over Will Russell. The price had been unimaginably high, but Harlock's sacrifice had bought them a chance, however slim, at survival. Yet even as the Alliance paused to lick its wounds and mourn its fallen, new alarms began to sound. Long-range sensors detected unknown vessels appearing at the edges of charted space, their designs unlike anything seen before. Will's weary eyes widened as he studied the incoming data. Whatever these newcomers were, their technology was beyond even the Zgoth, and they were heading straight for Alliance territory. The war, it seemed, was just getting started. The unknown vessels materialized with startling suddenness, their sleek forms defying the laws of physics. Will's eyes widened as he studied the sensor readouts, his mind racing to process the implications. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our database," reported Lieutenant Kira, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. "These ships, they're passing through our defense grid like it isn't even there." Before Will could respond, a blinding flash erupted on the screen. Where the colony of New Horizon had stood moments before, there was now only a swirling vortex of distorted spacetime. "By the stars," whispered Admiral Thax, his scaled skin paling. "What are we dealing with?" The answer came in a barrage of weapons fire that tore through Allied positions with terrifying ease. Screams and frantic distress calls flooded the comm channels as world after world fell to the unstoppable onslaught. In the days that followed, the true scope of the threat became clear. These were the Ixiari, an ancient race thought to exist only in legend. Their technology was beyond comprehension, their motives inscrutable. Will stood before the emergency summit, surrounded by the haggard faces of Alliance leadership. The mood was one of desperation, bordering on despair. "The Valaxian superweapon is our only option," insisted Chancellor Voss, her holographic form flickering. "We must use it, despite the toll." Will's mind focused. The thought of unleashing such indiscriminate destruction made his stomach churn. "There has to be another way," he said, his mind racing. "If we could infiltrate their command structure, steal their core intelligence." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the assembly. "Impossible," scoffed General Kral of the Krellian Imperium. "Their defenses are impenetrable." "Not if we create the right diversion," Will countered, a plan taking shape. His gaze settled on a young Krellian officer standing at attention near the back of the room. "You, what's your name?" "Graven, sir. Tactical Specialist Graven." Will nodded. "I saw your file from Caraxes. You have a knack for unconventional thinking. I want you to lead this mission." Graven's mandibles clicked in surprise, but he straightened his posture. I won't let you down, Commander." The next hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Graven assembled his team with meticulous care. Sergeant Harper, a battle-hardened human marine, Zix, a Valaxian tech prodigy, and Lyra, an Orion infiltration expert, whose beguiling appearance belied a razor-sharp mind. Their target, the HFY Battle Hive, a colossal vessel that served as the invaders' mobile command center. The operation hinged on a daring feint. While the bulk of Allied forces launched simultaneous attacks on 3 separate fronts, Graven's team would slip through the chaos in a modified stealth shuttle. As they approached the battle hive, Zix's eyes widened behind his interface visor. "The complexity of their systems. It's beautiful," he whispered. "Stay focused," Graven snapped, guiding their craft through a maze of energy fields. "We have one shot at this." They breached the outer hull, immediately plunging into a nightmarish landscape of twisting corridors and pulsing organic technology. Lyra took point, her enhanced senses guiding them past patrols of towering HFY warriors. In the central data core, Zix worked feverishly to download the precious intelligence while the others stood guard. Sweat beaded on his brow as the upload bar crawled agonizingly slowly. A piercing alarm shattered the silence. Scurry voices echoed from multiple directions, closing in fast. Graven made the call that would haunt him for years to come. "Harper, Zix, hold them off. We need more time." Understanding flashed in the human's eyes. He nodded grimly, shouldering his pulse rifle. "It's been an honor, sir." Zix disconnected from the interface, his normally cheerful face set in persistence. "I'll rig the systems to overload. Should buy you a few extra minutes." Graven wanted to say more, to thank them for their sacrifice. But there was no time. He and Lyra sprinted for the extraction point, the sounds of battle fading behind them. They barely made it back to Allied space, their shuttle battered in leaking atmosphere. But the mission was a success. The stolen data provided the key to cracking HFY defenses. Weeks later, over the embattled skies of New Providence, humanity struck back. HFY ships found their phasing technology suddenly useless, trapped in normal space where Alliance weapons could tear them apart. On the ground, the invaders' psionic assaults faltered against hastily constructed Sci shields. For the first time since their arrival, the HFY tasted defeat. As their fleet retreated in disarray, a cautious optimism spread through Alliance ranks. Will watched the battle unfold from the bridge of the Defiant, his expression a mix of relief and grim perseverance. This victory had come at a terrible cost, and he knew the war was just getting started. But they had proven that even the mighty HFY could bleed. As the last enemy ship winked out of sensor range, Will's attention turned to a flashing alert on his command console. New intelligence was coming in, hinting at an even greater threat lurking beyond the stars. The flashing alert on Will's console heralded a pivotal shift in the war. As he digested the incoming intelligence, a plan began to crystallize. The Alliance had tasted victory, but now was the time to press their advantage. "Admiral Graven," Will addressed the newly promoted Krellian, his mandibles still clicking with nervous energy. "I need your tactical brilliance more than ever. We're going on the offensive." Graven's compound eyes flickered with a mix of tenacity and apprehension. "Commander Russell, I'm honored. But are you certain I'm ready for this level of responsibility?" Will's response was cut short by the arrival of a tall, stern-faced human. "Colonel James Hudson, reporting as ordered, sir," the newcomer announced, snapping a crisp salute. "At ease, Colonel," Will nodded. "You're just in time. I want you working directly with Admiral Graven on our next series of operations." As Will outlined the broad strokes of their strategy, Hudson's eyes lit up with a dangerous glint. "Sir, if I may," he interjected, "I have a proposal that could turn the tide decisively in our favor." The colonel's plan was audacious, bordering on madness. Use human operatives as double agents, feeding the XRE false intelligence while sabotaging their efforts from within. It was a high-risk gambit that could easily backfire if discovered. Graven's antenna twitched as he considered the implications. "The potential rewards are immense," he mused, mandibles working furiously. "But the danger to our operatives—" "They'll be volunteers only," Hudson assured him. "Highly trained, fully aware of the risks." Will watched the interplay between his two advisors, seeing the seeds of a formidable partnership. "Make it happen," he ordered, "but I want contingencies in place for every possible outcome." In the weeks that followed, carefully selected human agents began infiltrating XRE-occupied worlds. They blended seamlessly into local populations, establishing covert networks and recruiting sympathetic aliens to their cause. On New Caldoria, a human operative named Maya crouched in a dimly lit alleyway, her heart pounding. She placed a data crystal containing fabricated Alliance fleet movements into a hidden compartment, praying the XRE informant would take the bait. Across the sector on Proxima 6, another agent, Callum, meticulously sabotaged a power relay station. His nimble fingers worked with practiced ease, ensuring the damage would look like simple equipment failure. The fruits of their labor soon became apparent. XRE forces, acting on false intelligence, launched a massive assault on an empty sector of space. Their supply lines, stretched thin by constant malfunctions, began to fray. Aboard the Defiant, Graven and Hudson pored over tactical displays, fine-tuning their masterstroke. The XRE command nexus at Epsilon Eridana loomed as a tempting target, ripe for a decapitation strike. "The latest reports from our embedded agents confirm it," Hudson declared, his eyes gleaming. "The bulk of the XRE fleet is massed here." He indicated a cluster of red icons. "They're completely buying our misdirection." Graven's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Then we strike. Here." His claw tapped a different sector entirely. "They'll never see it coming." The assault unfolded with brutal efficiency. Alliance ships tore through the meager XRE defenses without difficulty. On the ground, Graven led the charge personally, his chitinous armor gleaming as he carved a path through stunned XRE warriors. In the command hub's central chamber, surrounded by the broken bodies of alien leaders, Graven allowed himself a moment of savage triumph. They had done it. The XRE war machine was in disarray. But even as reports of victory flooded in, a shadow crossed Will's face. Long-range scans showed XRE reserve fleets amassing near lifeless worlds, following unmapped routes to an unknown destination. "What are they up to?" he muttered, studying the data with growing unease. Whatever drove the XRE to these desolate regions, Will knew it couldn't be good. A chill ran down his spine as he contemplated what new horrors might lie ahead. Will's brow furrowed as he studied the long-range scans. The XRE reserve fleets moved with unsettling purpose towards a cluster of lifeless worlds. Something about their behavior set off alarm bells in his mind. "Graven, Hudson," he called, his voice tight. "Emergency briefing, now." Minutes later, the three stood huddled around a holo display, faces bathed in the eerie glow of dead planets. "What in the void are they doing out there?" Hudson muttered, his eyes narrowed. Graven's antennae twitched. "Perhaps regrouping for a counterattack?" Will shook his head. "No, this is something else. Look at these energy readings." The display zoomed in, showing bizarre fluctuations across multiple spectrums. Will's stomach churned as a horrifying theory took shape. "They're not just fleeing," he said softly. "They're searching for something ancient, something powerful." Hudson's face paled. "A weapon?" "Or worse," Will replied. The next hours were a whirlwind of activity. Stealth probes launched, gathering intel that only deepened their fears. Grainy images showed Yaori crews engaged in inexplicable rituals amidst towering monoliths on barren worlds. Graven paced, mandibles clicking furiously. "We must strike now while their forces are divided." Will held up a hand. "No, whatever they're after, it could be an even greater threat than the Exuri themselves." His gaze settled on a personnel file floating on a nearby screen. "Get me Eric's," he ordered. "We need the best for this." The Guvarian scout materialized in the war room, her iridescent scales shimmering under the harsh lights. Will laid out the situation, watching her luminous eyes narrow with each detail. "Your mission," he concluded, "is to infiltrate one of these dead worlds. Find out what the Exuri are really after." Eric's nodded, her voice a low hiss. "I'll bring back answers, Commander, or I won't come back at all." The stealth shuttle slipped past Exuri patrols, a ghost in the void. Urix landed amid the twisted ruins of a world scoured clean eons ago. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the whisper of her breath inside her suit. She crept forward, sensors alert for any sign of Exuri activity. The ruins loomed, angular shapes that hurt the eye to look at directly. A faint chanting reached her ears. Urix followed the sound, her heart pounding. She crested a ridge and froze. Below, a group of HFY Scions stood in a circle, tendrils writhing as they intoned phrases that made Urix's scales crawl. At the center stood a massive obelisk of obsidian, pulsing with sickly energy. Urix's blood ran cold as understanding dawned. "No," she whispered. "They can't be—" But she knew the Exuri were awakening something that should have remained sleeping for eternity. She turned to flee to warn the others, but a searing pain lanced through her skull. Extraordinary shock troops materialized, surrounding her. As consciousness faded, Urix saw a towering figure approach, the Supreme Archon itself. She awoke in a chamber of nightmares. The Archon loomed over her, its psychic voice grating against her mind. "You will bear witness," it intoned, "to the rebirth of the Kyrathans, to the end of your reality." Urix struggled against her bonds as the implications sank in. The Exuri weren't conquering the galaxy. They were ushering in its annihilation. A piercing alarm shattered the moment. The chamber rocked with explosions. Through the chaos, a familiar voice. "Urix, hold on!" Joran. Her heart soared even as dread gripped her. He shouldn't be here. None of them should. As Joran worked to free her, Urix saw the Archon complete its ritual. The obelisk pulsed, reality itself seeming to warp. "We're too late," she breathed. Across the stars, ancient seals shattered. Monstrous forms beyond comprehension blinked into existence. The Kyrathons had awakened. And the true war for survival was about to begin. The Kyrathans tore through reality like wet paper, their impossible forms defying comprehension. Will Russell stood frozen on the bridge of the Defiant, watching in horror as entire worlds vanished into gaping maws of unreality. "All ships, fall back," he barked, snapping out of his paralysis. "We need to regroup and assess the situation." As the Allied fleet retreated, Will convened an emergency war council. Admiral Graven's mandibles clacked furiously as he paced the briefing room. "We must strike now, while they're still materializing," Graven insisted, his compound eyes flashing. "Hit them with everything we have before they gain a foothold." Will shook his head. "And risk accelerating their manifestation? No, we need a more surgical approach." He turned to a slender, silver-skinned alien. "Dr. Jaron, you said you had a breakthrough?" The Valaxian scientist nodded, her luminous eyes blinking rapidly. "Yes, Commander. We've modified our Sci-Fi shielding technology to create localized distortion fields. In theory, they should be capable of destabilizing the Kyrathans and forcing them back to their own dimension." In theory, Will echoed. He studied the schematics floating above the holotable. But to deploy these, we'd need to get close, very close. Suicide missions, Hudson muttered. Will's fist tight. Not quite. We'll use drones and unmanned probes for the initial push. Clear a path for our infiltration teams. He locked eyes with each person in the room. I won't lie, this is beyond dangerous. But it's our only shot at averting total annihilation. The plan came together with brutal efficiency. Within hours, the first wave of drones plunged into the nightmarish hellscape of a Kyrathon beachhead. Will watched the feeds with a mixture of awe and revulsion as reality itself seemed to twist and buckle. Biomechanical abominations scuttled across blasted landscapes. Cities crumbled into nothingness, devoured by cosmic hunger. And through it all, the drones pushed forward, clearing a path for the infiltration teams. In the launch bay, Joran checked his gear one last time. The grizzled veteran's face was a mask of persistence as he addressed his squad. You all know the stakes, he said, his voice gruff. We get in, we plant the device, we get out. Simple as that. As their stealth shuttle streaked towards the X-ray ritual platform, Joran allowed himself a moment of grim reflection. He'd survived countless missions, but this felt different. Final. The shuttle rocked as it pierced the outer defenses. Joran steadied himself, pushing thoughts of Eric's from his mind. There would be time for reunions later, if they survived. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot's voice crackled over the comm. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on your souls. Joran hefted his pulse rifle. Who needs gods, he muttered, when you've got a good weapon and a crazier plan? The bay doors opened, and Joran's team plunged into madness. Chaos, the searing heat of plasma bolts whizzed past Joran's head as he dove for cover behind a twisted mass of alien technology. His team scattered, taking up defensive positions amidst the ruins of the XRE ritual platform. Status report, Joran barked into his comm. Zhang here, came a breathless voice. I've got eyes on the target, 30 meters northeast, heavily guarded. Joran risked a glance over his cover. Through the haze of battle, he saw it, the pulsing obelisk at the heart of the XRE's mad scheme. He gritted his teeth, knowing what had to be done. Listen up, he growled. We've got one shot at this. Lexi, Singh, I need suppressing fire on my mark. Zhang, you're with me. We're going for the package. A chorus of acknowledgments crackled through the comm. Joran took a deep breath, steadying himself for what was to come. Mark! The air erupted in a symphony of weapons fire. Lexi and Singh unleashed hell, their barrage forcing the XRE defenders to hunker down. Joran burst from cover, Zhang hot on his heels. They sprinted across the blasted landscape, ducking and weaving through a maelstrom of energy blasts and twisting unreality. Joran's lungs burned as he pushed himself to the limit, knowing that every second counted. Suddenly, a massive tentacle erupted from the ground, lashing out at Zhang. The young operative went down with a cry of pain. Joran skidded to a halt, torn between the mission and his fallen comrade. Go! Zhang shouted, struggling against the writhing appendage. I'll hold it off! With a curse, Joran pressed on. He reached the obelisk, fumbling with the device Jaren had entrusted to him. His fingers flew over the controls, priming the localized distortion field. A roar of cosmic fury shook the very foundations of reality. Joran looked up to see a colossal Kirathan form materializing overhead, its impossible geometry making his eyes water. Not today, you bastard, Joran muttered. He slammed his palm down on the activation switch. The world exploded in a cacophony of light and sound. Joran felt himself being torn apart and reassembled on a molecular level as space-time buckled around him. Through the maelstrom, he caught glimpses of the Kirathan thrashing in agony, its form unraveling like smoke in the wind. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. Joran found himself sprawled on the ground, every nerve ending screaming in protest. He pushed himself to his feet, surveying the aftermath. The ritual platform was a smoldering ruin. Of the X-Shri and their eldritch allies, there was no sign. Joran's team emerged from the chaos, battered but alive. As the adrenaline faded, the magnitude of their victory began to sink in. They had done it. They had driven back the Kyrathons and dealt a crippling blow to the HFY war machine. But Joran knew this was not nearly finished. As he helped Zhang limp towards their extraction point, his mind raced with the implications of what they had witnessed. The HFY would not take this defeat lying down, and the Kyrathons, they would be back. Of that, he had no doubt. Aboard the Defiant, Will Russell received the after-action report with a mixture of relief and trepidation. They had won the day, but at what cost? And how long would this victory last? He turned to Zarin, the Valaxian scientist's silver skin shimmering under the harsh light of the war room. "You said you had a breakthrough?" Zarin nodded, her luminous eyes blinking rapidly. "Yes, Commander. What we've witnessed today, it's only the beginning. I believe we can harness the power of the distortion field on a much larger scale." Will leaned in, his interest piqued. "Go on?" As Zarin outlined her ambitious plan, Will felt a glimmer of hope kindle in his chest. It was audacious, perhaps even insane. But in the face of cosmic horrors and implacable foes, what choice did they have? He straightened, his mind made up. "Assemble a team," he ordered. "We're going after the Genesis singularity." Will Russell's eyes widened as he processed Zarin's plan. The Valaxian scientist's silver skin seemed to pulse with excitement as she elaborated on the concept of a galactic-scale reality anchor. "It's ambitious," Will admitted, studying the holographic schematics. "But can we pull it off in time?" Before Zarin could respond, Admiral Graven burst into the war room, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Commander, we have a situation. The XRE have reactivated their abandoned gateways. Kyrathon forces are pouring through across 100 worlds." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Will's eyebrows furrowed. "Show me." Graven activated the central holo display. Tactical overlays flickered to life, each red dot representing a Kyrathon incursion. The map looked like it had contracted a virulent disease. "We're out of options," Will declared. "Zarin, your reality anchor is our only shot. How fast can we make this happen?" The Valaxian's luminous eyes blinked rapidly. "With unlimited resources and manpower? Months, maybe weeks." Will nodded grimly. "You'll have it. I'm authorizing Project Lodestar effective immediately." He turned to the assembled officers. "Strip mine whatever worlds we need. Conscript every scientist, engineer, and laborer in Allied space. We're in a race against annihilation." As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Will locked eyes with Colonel James Hudson. "James, I need you to lead this. Your organizational skills are the only thing that can keep a project of this magnitude from imploding." Hudson straightened, a spark of grit in his eyes. "Consider it done, sir." Weeks blurred into months as Project Lodestar took shape. Entire planets were hollowed out, their resources funneled into the construction of massive dimension shearing arrays. Zarin worked tirelessly, her brilliant mind pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Meanwhile, the war raged on. Captain Joran found himself leading Vanguard Squadron in a desperate push to liberate Valax, Zarin's ravaged homeworld. The sky was alive with Kyrathon hunter flyers, their impossible geometries leaving contrails of madness in their wake. "Guvarian flight, on me!" Joran barked into his comm. "We need to clear a path for the Krellian drop teams." His fighter screamed through the atmosphere, plasma cannons blazing. A Kyrathan monstrosity exploded in a shower of unreality, its death throes warping the very air around it. On the ground, Krellian shock troops fought their way through nightmarish landscape. The hive zone pulsed with malevolent energy, every step a battle against sanity itself. Just as all seemed lost, a blinding pulse rippled across the battlefield. The reality anchor's first activation phase had begun. Joran watched in awe as the Kyrathan forces wavered, their forms destabilizing like mirages in the desert. "Push now," he roared, seizing the moment. "While they're vulnerable—" The tide of battle shifted, but victory remained elusive. As the Alliance rallied its surviving fleets for a final confrontation, the XRE Archon unleashed its ultimate gambit. The skies above Zarin's Nexus world erupted in apocalyptic fury as the ritual to summon Krylax the Unraveler began. Reality itself began to fray at the edges. Joran's fighter bucked and shuddered as cosmic forces beyond comprehension tore at the fabric of space-time. Through it all, he caught glimpses of the monstrous form of Kryla-X coalescing in the void. "This is it," Joran muttered, his hands steady on the controls. "All or nothing." The order came through, a hyper-focused orbital strike on the anchor arrays. Joran's squadron fell into formation, their weapons primed and ready. "For Earth," he whispered, "for all of us." They dove into the maelstrom, their fighters mere specks against the vast, writhing mass of Kryla-X. Energy lanced from their weapons, saturating the anchor arrays in a storm of destructive power. For a moment, the universe held its breath. Then, with a shockwave that defied description, the reality anchor blossomed to full power. Joran's sensors went dark as reality reasserted itself with crushing force. When his systems came back online, he beheld a sight he never thought he'd see again. Clear skies, unmarred by eldritch horrors. The Kyrathons were gone, banished back to their hellish domain. The Exuri dreadnoughts flickered and vanished, their rituals disrupted. As the realization of victory slowly dawned, Joran allowed himself a moment of relief. But as he surveyed the cosmic devastation left in the wake of the Kirathan invasion, he knew their work was nowhere near the end. The nightmare had ended, but the scars it left behind would take generations to heal. The dust settled on a galaxy forever changed. Joran's fighter touched down on the scarred surface of Valax, its landing struts sinking into ash-covered soil. He popped the canopy, his eyes scanning the desolate landscape. A figure emerged from the haze, stumbling towards him. Joran's heart leapt as he recognized Irix's familiar gait. He scrambled down from the cockpit, closing the distance between them in long strides. They collided in a desperate embrace, clinging to each other amidst the ruins of Zaren's world. Joran breathed in Irix's scent, mingled with smoke and ozone. For a moment, the weight of their losses receded. "You made it," Irix whispered, voice hoarse. Joran pulled back, cupping Irix's face. "So did you." Their reunion was cut short by the crackle of Joran's comm. "Captain, we need you at the command post. Things are tense." With a shared look of resignation, they made their way through the devastation. The makeshift Alliance headquarters buzzed with activity, screens flickering with damage reports from 100 worlds. Admiral Graven's mandibles clicked furiously as he argued with a holographic projection of a Krellian general. "Your people knew the risks when you signed on for this war." "Risks?" the Krellian snarled. "We didn't sign up for the annihilation of entire systems." Joran winced. The reality anchor's activation had exacted a terrible price. Entire planets had been wiped from existence, caught in the backlash of cosmic forces beyond comprehension. A commotion near the command table drew his attention. Commander Will Russell stood at its center, his face a mask of exhaustion and guilt. He barely reacted as accusations flew from all sides. "Where's Zaren?" Joran asked, scanning the room. A nearby technician shook her head. "Gone. Last transmission we got, he was manually adjusting the anchor arrays during the final bombardment." Joran's chest tightened, another name for the ever-growing list of the fallen. Days blurred together as the Alliance grappled with the aftermath. Joran found himself thrust into diplomatic missions, trying to hold together fracturing alliances. He returned to the command post after another grueling negotiation to find Will Russell slumped in a chair, staring at nothing. "Sir?" Joran approached cautiously. "Any word on our next move?" Will's gaze slowly focused on him. "There's something you need to know, Captain." In hushed tones, Will revealed the fate of the recon team sent beyond the veil. Joran listened in growing horror as he realized the true depth of their commander's desperation. Before Joran could formulate a response, alarms blared throughout the base. He sprinted to the command center, arriving just in time to see Will's scout ship vanish into the swirling rift of unreality. "What's he doing?" Joran demanded. Tasneem Wagner, Will's wife, stood frozen before the view screen. "Chasing ghosts," she whispered. As the rift sealed itself, Joran felt the weight of an uncertain future settle upon his shoulders. The galaxy they'd fought to save now teetered on the brink of a different kind of chaos. He turned to face the assembled leaders, their faces a mix of shock, anger, and fear. Joran took a deep breath, knowing that the real work of rebuilding was only just beginning. "All right," he said, his voice steady. "Let's get to work."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.